Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Dimensional Wellness. This is DeeDee, and I'm so glad to be here with you today, exchanging some energy, exchanging some vibes. I hope that you are doing good. We are preparing for Halloween coming up, which is a very, very interesting day. Of course, especially, I was about to say excessively, but that's true though, especially for people who are avid dreamers or who have spiritual phenomenon around them. Of course, if you have these things that maybe you have noticed, I have noticed that the end of October into November is like ancestor season. Okay, so it was funny because Ray and I were just talking about this, and I was like, we're getting into the depths of underworld season, of course, right? Because this is also Scorpio, which rules the occult, and it's so fun because Ray's always like, no, it's Pisces, and Pisces definitely rules like the unconscious, and in that way, it can be an underworld, but it's, I don't know. For me personally, it feels like it's more of like a symbolic kind of underworld, right? Because you have the underworld of like the unconscious mind, which is the different aspects of your soul and, soul expressions and things like that. And then the things that you are unaware of that other people are unaware of that could be like a glue, connecting everyone. I like to think about when, you feel like a really strong pull to someone and you don't know exactly what it is, and there is some kind of unconscious situation that's going on that is pulling you guys together for some type of experience. So that's what I think about with the underworld with Pisces. But when I think about Scorpio, I think about the subconscious underworld, and also physical underworld. So things that are hidden from your sight, where you have to know what you're looking at to really see what you're looking at, if that makes sense. So I'll give like an example, right? Because we're going to do a very interesting story time today. So this example would be, like, let's say, what's like a good example? Because I was going to use one. I'm like, what's a good example to use? Okay, let's say that you are in a mall setting and there are people who are wearing like yellow wristbands or something, and you consciously see the yellow wristbands, but since you don't know what that represents, you don't really pay attention to it. Until someone grabs a girl with a yellow wristband and, hurriedly pulls her into the women's bathroom. Then you'll be like, oh my gosh, wait, so the yellow wristband must be important. So then you see, maybe scattered a few people with the yellow wristband. And then later on, you go home and you research what a yellow wristband represents. And it represents the possibility of someone being trafficked or something. This would kind of represent the underworld of the subconscious and also physicality to me that Scorpio represents. These are things that are in plain sight, but even something in plain sight can be hidden if you don't know what the meaning of it is, which are symbols throughout movies and terms and things like that, especially because, many different people use many different symbols for a lot of different things. And so even though you might see a continuous symbol, it doesn't mean that it represents the same thing for every person. And that's also kind of the trippy thing, right? Because you would have to know the person personally to know what that symbol represents to them. And that's kind of the chaos of physicality, right? So we're going deeper into this season. I think today might be the changeover into Scorpio. Today is October 23rd. I think, I'm not exactly sure. But anyways, so, be aware. That's what I would say. Be aware if there are, certain, visitation dreams that you have. I would write down dreams that you have during this season. Any, spiritual phenomenon. I was actually just on Instagram and I saw this guy who clearly had a spirit in his house. She was moving the chair. He could see her through the TV reflection. And I don't know if that happened recently, but it was just interesting that I saw it on my timeline. And another thing I want to mention, which is not where I was planning to go with this today, but then I'm gonna get into the story time. Okay, but also people's intentions are going to be very, very on them in this season. And so I'd really pay attention to what people are saying and what they're talking about, how they're saying it, because it also seems like this is a time period where intentions are going to really be known. Even last night I had this interesting dream about the Mad Hatter. And I was like on this ranch, which I do not frequently visit ranches. But I was on this ranch with my kids, and there was a spirit of a young woman who came up to me, and she was like giving me like a report. And so when I looked at the report, I realized that it was a report of every time the Mad Hatter had tried to capture me. And I was like, what? And then, I was like, I don't even know, like I've heard that before, like the Mad Hatter, but I, have never really looked into it before. And then I realized that there's the Mad Hatter on Alice in Wonderland. And so the kids, I actually just randomly, but not randomly, obviously, put on Alice in Wonderland last night for the kids to watch. And so when I looked it up this morning, that Mad Hatter is on Alice in Wonderland, I was like, what? Now, as a kid, I've seen Alice in Wonderland. So in my subconscious, deeply somewhere, I have seen the Mad Hatter as a character, but did I actually know he was called Mad Hatter? No. And then the Mad Hatter that I saw, because she actually had like a visualization of this person, didn't look exactly like that. So I was like, oh, okay, interesting, because I've been feeling a lot of different energies around. So I'm like, okay, that makes sense that some energy around is trying to get some type of information or whatever. So anyways, that's my little disclaimers for Scorpio season. So let's get into this story time. I think I'm going to do 2 story times. And off the top of my head, I am not exactly sure how they're connected to each other right now. But I'm going to do one, and then the second one is popping up in my head to talk about. And I think we're going to talk about apportation. Okay. So I like to do a little disclaimer before we really, really get into it. Okay. A disclaimer on these specific type of videos, because I know that everyone doesn't have these type of experiences. I do have these type of experiences. And so if it just sounds like totally wild to you and you don't really know what to think about it, the only thing I can tell you is that like it's a possibility. And so maybe you've been brought to this video to consider the possibility and possibly have some of these experiences or something. But if it just sounds totally crazy to you, and like you're leaning towards not believing it, I don't know, like it happened. So I don't know. So I wanted to give that little disclaimer, which wasn't much of a disclaimer, but just to be like, there's going to be content in here that could be hard for some people to believe, especially when people are trying to figure out like the connections to it. So I don't know exactly everything that happened with this scenario, but I've had enough of these type of experiences to know that this is something that exist out of a certain level of consciousness. And so it's probably kind of difficult to, I guess, scientifically study how it happens, because like just overall, like in my situation, it was a random occurrence. Now, when I get into it, you'll see it wasn't exactly random in the sense that I had no clue it was going to happen. I just didn't know it was going to happen like that. Very much like my story time with my ancestor altar, which I could have taken down, but I'm going to put it back up. I'm probably just going to do it again, talk about it again. So anyways, there's content in here that some people might find hard to believe, and that's okay. You can just look at it as like a very interesting story if you like, but it is based in reality. It actually happened. Okay, so now that that's over with, let's go ahead and talk about the first story time. So this is the one that I was planning to talk on, and I'm trying to think about what triggered me to want to talk about this. Oh, you know what I think it is, and I'm not exactly sure how all of these are connected. I know loosely how they're connected, but I've been getting a lot of Agartha, Shambhala type of things. And so I'm assuming that probably is the trigger as to why it's coming up right now. So I had this experience back in 2018. Oh, okay. I'm seeing the connection. Okay, this is the connection. So this guy that I saw on Instagram that had the angry ghost, we'll say just ghost in his house, spirit, okay, in his house. This guy who was talking about it was like, oh, look at this evil entity. And they're like, people in the comments, like, I don't, take any of the negativity in this video in the name of Jesus, like whatever evil demon or whatever is in the house, we don't want to be a part of it, right? And it's so interesting because there's so many people's realities where spirit and spirit dynamics are not discussed. And so the only thing that people have is anything outside of this world is either gods, angels, or demons. And that can be a really big disservice because there's so many things in between God, angels, demons, and of course, passed on humans. So that's like a whole thing. And probably I'll do like a longer video. I might even do like a little mini book on the basics of like spirit dynamics, we'll say spirit dynamics. So I'm not a full expert in this, and I'm just saying that because like I don't regularly talk to spirits on call, but I've communicated with enough energies to get a sort of sense of some of the dynamics, so to start us out, I could definitely do that at some point. But anyways, when I was looking at it, you can actually see the apparition of the person in the TV. So the TV was off and it was black, which reminds me of black mirrors. And black mirrors are very, very powerful, black obsidian mirrors. I've not had a physical one, but I have worked with it in meditation, and it is very powerful. Now, I don't know the specific dynamics of that, but it's very powerful. So something about black TV. So anyways, you could see the apparition in the TV. So he was recording it and the spirit was moving the chair. Okay. And you could audibly hear the spirit pretty much telling them to get out. Now, for my assumption, which these are assumptions that I'm making right now, the house looked like it was a pretty new house, relatively new. Now, obviously they didn't just move into it like that day because there was a woman there and she was pretty much like over the spiritual phenomenon. Okay. So I could tell that like they had been in the house for a pretty decent amount of time because they were past the point of spirits spooking them, right? Everything in life has, a level of you getting used to it. So first time you see an apparition, you're probably going to freak out. Maybe the second time you might freak out. By the third time, you become more curious and more, exploratory about it. And then after a while, you either start talking to it or you're over its BS, right? And she was at that point. She was like, you know what? I just don't have time for this today. So like the lazy boy or whatever it was is like rocking by itself, and she's like, I just don't have time for it today. And even with the guy, obviously he was like, oh, let me record it. So he's past the point that, in movies and TV shows, they tell you that, the phenomenon stops when you start trying to tell people about it. So even they're past that mental point, and he knew that he would be able to capture it because his spirit is very persistent. Right. And so when I was looking at it, I was like, oh, okay, I've had experience like this before, where you have a quote unquote poltergeist activity. Now, I'm not taking away poltergeist as saying that there are not poltergeist spirits that are just like, throwing things around and like, acting crazy, or with an asterisk mark, or that there are not evil entities sometimes that do, come into people's houses. However, what I would say is that there's also the option that with a relatively new house, and maybe you don't know a whole lot about the history of that house, my personal experience has been that we moved into a rental, and there was the son of an owner of this house that was poltergeising the rental that we were staying in. And thank goodness I was like, spiritually in tune enough to pick up that all the things that were breaking down were out of the norm. So we had a lot of things breaking down and going wrong in the house. And I was like, this is beyond normal breaking down stuff. Like, it was like we fix one thing and then something else. We fix something, then something else will go out. We fix something and something else will go out. And then we had like the whole heating system go out. And I was like, okay, no, something is definitely going on. Like, there must be a spirit around. And of course, during this time period, there's a lot of other spiritual phenomenon going on in the house and in the neighborhood. So I was like, okay, let me sit in meditation and let me see. So in this meditation, this energy gave me their name, and he told me that his name was Terry. And Terry was letting me know that this home that I was staying in as a rental was a home that his family had owned for a few generations. Especially when you're in New Orleans, some of the homes, generation to generation to generation can live in it. Even if it's a rental home or whatever, generations can live in the home. And so he was like kind of telling me something about that, the younger generation had not taken care of it or something like that, and they didn't have the money to keep it in the family. And so the person who, was over it, this entity was this spirit, because it's not really an entity like that. The spirit of this passed on person was upset that the house had not been taken care of. And so it really gave me this empathy of like, oh, okay, I could see how, if when Ray and I built a house for our loved ones, right, with the intention of, okay, we'll be able to stay here generation after generation, keep it in the family, make sure it's paid off, make sure that our kids and our grandkids at least have one house that we all own, so that, push comes to shove, they have a place where they don't have to go out there and find a new place and blah, 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 and work to pay off all these things. They have at least one place that everybody, if push comes to shove, they can come and stay and then save up money and things like that. And if we've had it in the, family for like, 5 generations, and then something happens with, between a generation and their children, our family, but just saying their children, and the property gets sold off to people who don't really care about it, and they just turn it into a rental property and they're not taking care of it. I definitely probably would show up as not me specifically, but just, I could see how someone could show up as a poltergeist and be upset that it's not being taken care of. And then I promise you, this spirit was like, and you didn't even ask if you can move in here. This is what this Terry energy told me. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I am so sorry, because I didn't even know, I didn't even think that was a thing that you had to do. It didn't even cross my mind that it got that serious. Now, the other interesting thing is that probably about a few months after this energy told me its name, I ended up having a dream about someone that I went to college with, whose name is also Terry. And so that was kind of who I had not seen in a very long time. And that was kind of my validation that I was actually talking to this person, right? Because when you're talking to spirits, there's a lot of different spirits. Then you have to go, there has to be like a way that you validate it, and so certain things like that happen. And so I saw this person's face and I was like, oh my gosh, yes, like Terry from school. And then unfortunately that person ended up even passing away a few years later. And so I was like, oh, that's such an interesting connection, because he actually lived in the area that I lived in, which I didn't really know that. So anyways, but that was kind of my checks and balances. And after I had this conversation, which I also knew by that validation, after I had this conversation with the spirit, things stopped breaking down in the house. I kid you not, things stopped breaking down in the house. And then once we moved out of that place, it got revamped and it looked so beautiful and so nice. And I made sure I told the owner, Terry, I was like, I will, put as much good energy in here as possible. And I let him know, I'm like, we have kids. So we have kids. And so some stuff's probably going to get broken. But we had like a little conversation, and he was like, he had kids before. And so it was like this, understanding of like some things are probably going to get broken because we've got a lot of toddlers. But I would try to put as much energy into it, make sure that the, house gets revamped and things like that, because they were already planning to do a revamping on it. But, if you know life, sometimes you have a really big plan for something and it doesn't go exactly how you want it to go. So I'm not going to say that we were the reason, because we weren't the reason, but I put a lot of good energy in there to make sure that the place did stay on track for that. And so during this time period, is when I had this experience, okay? During this time period is when I had this experience. And this was like a lit time period. We had so many powerful dreams. I mean, really, it's probably us as well, because we really have powerful dreams and experiences like in every place that we lived. But this place specifically, I had this experience and it really, really sat with me. As far as when people are like, oh, tap into your power and blah, 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 blah. This was one of those experiences that I was like, oh yeah, we definitely have some untapped energy. And there's actually probably a really good reason why some people do not tap into their full potential. And so I was like, oh, okay, I'm getting it now. Okay, so that was a long explanation and everything like that. Shout out to you if you have listened to all of this. But I really feel like when I'm telling stories to like my friends and we're talking back and forth to each other, the little nuances make a big difference. And like I said, eventually I'm going to go back into timestamps so that you can just get to exactly what you're looking for. So this particular day, I actually don't know what was going on, but it was probably something crazy going on in the neighborhood. And I was like, you know what? Let me see how we're going to get out of this neighborhood, because it was a wild neighborhood. I will say that. But then come to find out that I have family connections in this neighborhood. I actually found out that this place, as well as another place I moved, I had family that actually used to live almost exactly where we lived, which was wild AF. So there was something going on, it was kind of a crime, it was a crime infested area that we did not really know because we were naive to that. And we just needed a place to live. How we got to that place is a whole nother story. A whole lot of synchronicities and a whole lot of different things. So I knew that even though this was like a rough area, there was something there for Ray and I to like work out energetically being in that space. I do believe that those things happen sometimes where you're called to a specific place for a specific reason. Now, Arizona, I don't know why we got called to Arizona. But anyways, okay. So this day I was like, you know what? I'm going to astral project and I'm going to figure out why we're in this area and how we can get out of New Orleans in general. Okay. So I put together this plan and I was like, I didn't read any books or anything specifically that day. I just made a plan. And so this is what I did. And I would use this with caution because sometimes you just get really powerful visualizations. And then sometimes you actually get what you're looking for. So with caution, okay? Because I haven't figured out the on-call and on-demand aspect of this. So sometimes it's powerful, and then sometimes it's like way more powerful than you thought it would be. Okay, so with discretion. So what I did was there was this guy, and I'll link his video because I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but he's a bald guy. Actualize.com, maybe it's actualize.com. And he was talking about this pose called the star pose. And a certain breathing technique that you do with the star pose that gets oxygen to your brain and then eventually sends you into a state of euphoria. And some people have said that that state is a good state to astral travel with. So I plan to do the star pose. Then there was this guy that I was listening to on YouTube who really talks about a lot of spiritual, metaphysical, and just reality type of stuff, but a different reality. And so he had an astral projection guided meditation that he had done years ago. So I was like, okay, I'm going to also do the star pose with this guided meditation. And then I did something simple, like I lit a candle and set my intention. So that's what I did. I laid on the ground in the star pose. I did the breathing technique, which he said it would take about 15 to 20 minutes for you to actually get to the state of euphoria that you're looking for. I lit the candle, and then I listened to this guided meditation. So as I was laying there at first, of course, because if you've done meditation, active meditation and stuff, it can be very hard to want to do it, to want to stay still, especially if you're an on-the-go person. You have a lot of high stress in your life. You have a lot of different things. It can actually be where you have a sort of opposition at first to laying still and not doing anything. So I had to mentally get myself over that. And it was difficult because I wanted to shake. I wanted to move. I wanted to get up. I wanted to be like, this is not working. I don't want to do it, But I was just like, okay, hush. Okay, hush, quiet, okay, hush, okay? And so that's what I was telling myself, hush. And so we were in this deep state eventually where I started to feel like my hands were going to sleep. And so then that was like a new thing for my brain to freak out about, like, oh my gosh, are we getting enough oxygen? Are we, blah, 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 blah. And at this point for me personally, I knew that I was fine, that this was a part of the process because he had warned about, certain things during this process. And there are certain hand positions. So I would definitely listen to the video. There are certain hand positions, to make sure that you're getting enough air and things like that. So anyways, my arms are falling asleep and my legs are starting to fall asleep. And, when they start to fall asleep at first, it's like that, tingling sensation that's almost painful, but, whatever. And so I just kind of sat through that and I was like, okay, we must be getting somewhere. So I started to change what I was thinking about in my mind. I was like, okay, instead of freaking out, I'm going to tell myself that we're getting where we're supposed to get. And these are the uncomfortable sensations as you transition to this astral projection form, okay? So for me, what ended up happening later on, so this is about probably I don't know exactly, I'm just going to guess, 10 minutes in, 12 minutes in. Then I started to notice, because I had the guided meditation playing, and I think it was, I don't know how long it was, but I started to notice that it was fading in the background. Like, you know, obviously when I first started, it was very loud in my ears because it was by my head on the floor. And so I could perfectly clearly hear it. Then I started to notice that I could only hear it out of my left ear, really. And then faintly, I could hear it. So I could probably hear it out of my right ear, but it was more pronounced on the left side. And it was very faint on the left side. And I just observed that. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Because something must be happening. I must be dissociating because I can't hear it as well. And it was like barely audible, though I could still hear him, is barely audible. Then the next thing I know, like, just everything seems still and quiet. And this is a thing that happens in life, and I've noticed that there's something really about this, where there's some type of dimensional shift or something. And it's interesting because I'm starting to get like sinus things, which I find interesting. This happened in another video I was doing where I was talking about something really profound. And I started getting like sinus stuff. That's weird. I'm going to do some research and see what that's about. But anyway, so there was this silence. And it's almost something that you can miss because it's so quiet, you forget that the world is hardly ever quiet. Like, you know, even right now, like it's quiet in the house because the kids are gone and my husband is gone, but I can hear the planes outside. Like if I pay attention, I can hear the slight buzz from the light bulbs, you know, like, you know, if you go to your washer or dryer or something like that, you can hear the buzz from, you know, the electronics, even though, you know, they're not actively working at the moment. You know, like reality is hardly ever silent, but this is like a clear silence, like where you can't hear anything. And it's very trippy because you know that you're still in reality, like your eyes are closed, but you know that you're still in reality. And so it's like, why am I not hearing anything? So then all I know is that everything, like my mind went blank for a minute. Because the next thing I know, like I kid you not, the next thing I know, my body, I was sitting under a Bodhi tree with a book in my hand. I kid you not, I was sitting under a tree with a book in my hand and I was reading something. And I was like, am I Buddha now? Like... I'm like, am I Buddha now? Because doesn't Buddha sit under the Bodhi tree? And I have never seen is it actually called a Bodhi tree? Is it a bonsai tree or a Bodhi tree? I don't know. Hold on. Bodhi. Oh, Bodhi is in Bodhisattva. Oh, I didn't realize that. I'm looking it up right now. Is it a type of bonsai tree? Because I keep hearing bonsai tree. This tree, planted around 250 BCE, is frequent destination for pilgrims, being the most important of the four main Buddhist pilgrimage sites. Oh, look at that tower. The Bodhi tree. Now, this is interesting because when I saw this, okay, so why is bonsai tree coming up? Bonsai? Oh, okay, yeah, bonsai Bodhi tree. Can you bonsai a Bodhi tree? A Bodhi tree is sacred in Buddhism and is highly regarded as a bonsai tree due to its significance and beauty. Oh, what does bonsai mean? How do you grow a bonsai Bodhi tree? What have I been saying? Have I been saying Bodhi? Oh, I'm sorry, you guys. I'm like, I heard bonsai in my mind. I'm like, what? I'm trying to figure out what that means. Yeah, bonsai tree meaning. A bonsai tree represents peace, balance, harmony, and luck, and are typically given as presents to symbolize friendship, loyalty, love, and respect. Their meaning doesn't stop there. If you receive a bonsai tree as a gift, fortune favors you twofold. Okay, bonsai thus means or denotes a tree which is planted in a shallow container. Oh, okay. Bonsai is a Japanese word meaning tree in a pot. However, the term originally comes from the Chinese word punsai or penjing, and was originally only cultivated by the elite in society. It wasn't until the Kamakura period that growing miniature trees inside pots were introduced into Japan. Okay. So I'm not exactly sure why that's coming up, but I'll do some research afterwards, because I don't know, maybe I was in a pot. It must have been a life-size pot, okay, because what I remember seeing, so I did not see this imagery of this Bodhi tree that's the pilgrimage site. All I remember seeing was a like grass for miles, like just grass for miles. And I felt like I was like the only person there. And I was sitting on grass. Maybe that kind of felt like turf a little bit, like, you know, that fake grass. I don't know, but I feel like it almost also had like this air element to it. It's kind of hard to explain. Like, it also had this air element where I felt like I wasn't exactly sitting on the grass either. I don't know, but I was definitely under a Bodhi tree. And I know that because I was looking at houses in Hawaii, and I don't know if I necessarily remembered that Buddha was under a Bodhi tree. But I remember looking at this property in Hawaii, and there was a huge Bodhi tree on the front of the property. And this house was actually in the shape of like a white dome. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then in the description of the house, they talked about the Bodhi tree that they had there. And then it said something about passion fruit. I think that maybe the name of the street meant passion fruit in Hawaiian or something. So when I looked up what the word meant, it meant passion fruit. And that's where I saw that the passion fruit is actually connected to the passion of the Christ, which I thought was very odd. But anyways, I knew that it was a Bodhi tree. When I was sitting in the meditation, I knew that it was a Bodhi tree. But that was like the confirmation of it, is I ended up looking on Zillow at these houses in Hawaii, in Paia, I believe. And there was a huge Bodhi tree on the property. And I was like, oh my gosh. Okay, so let me get back to what happened. So I'm under the Bodhi tree, and I look like myself. So I was not in like an orange monk suit or anything like that. I look like myself, so I could feel my arms, my legs, my body, everything like that. And there was an energy present, but I could tell that energy did not want to make itself known. And it didn't want to make itself known because it felt like this was my experience, I guess. And so it was letting me know that I wasn't alone, because it felt like I was literally on planet Earth by myself. That's what it literally felt like. So I guess it was like, you're not alone, but who I am or whatever, I'm not coming to talk. I'm just coming to like share space. And so I was looking at this book, and the book, I feel like it had invisible ink on it. Like, I couldn't see the words on the book, but I knew that it had words. So I don't know if it was invisible ink or something, child. I don't know. But there was like a part, but I was still reading it, I guess, because there was the part. And when I got to that part, I had like a moment of aha moment. Like, and it felt like almost like a spark in my brain. And then I immediately started flying out of that body. Okay, so it was full Doctor Strange, the Ancient One, when he was like, you think that you Oh my gosh, what does he say? You think that you see me? Well, it's me that sees you. It was something like that. It was very dramatic and theatrical, and I loved it. And she was like, she did this little twisting his energy one way, then counter twisting it another way, and then pushing him out through his third eye. And so you see all of these versions of himself as he's going back, and that's exactly what I saw. Now, I think that the first Doctor Strange, I think I had seen that in Doctor Strange, and so that was the visualization of it. And so I knew, because when did the first Doctor Strange come out? I'm pretty sure that... And I mean, I didn't even know anything about Doctor Strange comic books or anything like that. Yeah, it came out in 2016. And this was in 2018. I didn't know anything about the Doctor Strange comic books or anything like that. But when I saw the trailer for it on TV, that was like one of the movies that Ray and I were so amped up to see. I was so ready to see that movie, okay? I think it came out on a significant day, like sometime it came out October 13th. I have been seeing 10/13. Okay, so I need to go back and watch the first one because the second one was lit as well. Look, 2/17, very interesting. Doctor Strange and Multiverse of Madness, 2/17 and 2/22. Okay. I'm sitting under this tree. I get this realization or something about something, and it immediately sends me out of body, out of the body that I'm already in under this tree. Okay. So it's like, I don't even know. So I am literally floating up and up and up, and I can see all these versions of myself. Okay. I'm floating up and up and up in the air, and my brain starts to kick in. I'm like, oh my gosh, what is going on? And so I hear a voice, and they're like, you're about to make a decision. And so I'm like, okay. So I'm floating up and up and up, and that's when I start to feel, I don't know how to describe it, but that's when I start to feel the box, I guess, of reality. I don't know, like right now, like you're sitting down and you can sense the back of you, and you know that the back of you, unless you're like, sitting on a wall or something like that, but just when you're sitting with nothing on your back, you can sense that there is space back there. And so you are, to a certain degree, enclosed in something. Even when you're outside, you can sense, almost like a surround sense, if you really pay attention to it, you can feel the space between things with your back. Okay, like you have a sense that that's not, like the reality is not touching your back. This is what I felt like when I got all the way up. So I could see the Bodhi tree way down on the ground. And I was way in the sky, and I started to feel like the reality was touching my back. And I was like, what? And so it was really strong. So my back was like kind of curved. So it was touching like the middle of my back. Okay. And it was a very strong sense because I knew that I couldn't go any higher than that in the reality. I know it's really hard. Like English sometimes is like, it's got limitations to the experience of consciousness, but I could feel it on my back. So I decided to like kind of straighten myself out. And then I felt the whole reality on my back. And then I felt like a little pressure, and I started to see reality as a page in a book. Child. And it was like the reality that we're in, I'm pretty sure it was yellow. And then the next reality, so you could turn the page on reality. And the next one was like, I want to say, no, I think we were in the orange reality, and the next one was yellow. So it's like this reality is in the sacral chakra. And the next one is the yellow reality, which is in the sun reality, like the, solar plexus energy. And then I could also see the green reality. So I could see the realities like pages of a book, like chakra colors. So I could see green and I could see blue. I couldn't see past blue at that point because that seemed like that was pretty far away. Okay. And so there again was a spirit, and the spirit was like, do you want to go into a different reality? Now, as the spirit was telling me this, and this was a male energy, I understood that this was like, I guess, chakras on a bigger scale of reality. So we are microcosms of the universe in that sense, where we hold the possibilities and the essence, let's say, of all of creation, but we don't mainly reside in all of these spaces. So this reality is in the sacral chakra of reality. And like I said, the next one was operating from the willpower. But in him asking me that, I understood that there was a possibility that if I turned the page and I went to a different reality, that everything that I knew in this reality would look completely different. And what I got from him telling me that is that everything that's in my reality right now is, in a certain sense, set up exactly in a way to where I get to the yellow reality seamlessly, where there is a good transition. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, in that experience, he was letting me know that everything I'm experiencing on Earth is essential. Not everything, because I have to watch how I say it. Everything you experience on Earth is not essential to experience, but there is the potentiality of your reality to set you up for exactly what you need. That in that sense, you have the potential to create everything that you need in this reality. And there are reasons that there are steps as to how we go about certain things and how long it takes and, what it looks like, because there needs to be a seamlessness to the progression of, let's say, the spirit or the human. So this was more of like a spiritual thing. So this is outside of time and space, outside of just this incarnation. They were allowing me to see a bigger spiritual concept. And so I was like, yeah, you're right. I don't want to just turn the page on the entire reality, because I am learning a lot through this lifetime and this process. And then what I also found out about that simultaneously is that the issue was not my spiritual ability. It was a patience in allowing reality to unfold and having faith that it was going to unfold. And that's a very oversimplification of what I'm talking about, because that is not, of course, like when you're living out human life and stuff like that, you have choices and decisions, and those choices and decisions change things, and you can be proactive and, pull your reality and manifest and things like that. It's a very oversimplification. I'm talking about like at a very zoomed out perspective. There is a reason why we are in this reality in the form that we are in it. And so he was letting me know that enlightenment is not what I came here to learn, which was a very profound moment for me. And that's when I realized, because I was still kind of with the light worker, kind of traditional mainstream kind of concept of light worker. And, it points towards a reality of like, you're here to ascend. And actually what I found out in that moment, and I won't say that's for every person that identifies as a light worker, but once you get to a certain point, you realize that this is not about ascension. Helping out means that you would have to be here and not ascending, because by the time you ascend, you are out of the reality. That means that you will not be able to help people in the same capacity that you can when you are in the body. So yeah, and then the craziest thing, because that was wild and profound in of itself. Now, at this point, now I can't say I didn't have any recollection. So I knew that I was connected to Saraswati. I knew that. And I knew that I was connected to Chitragupta, the record keeper. But there was not like a conscious connection of me realizing that I had any type of connection to even the concept of a Buddha or Bodhisattva at all. And so I was actually pretty surprised that I ended up sitting under a Bodhi tree reading a book, a book with invisible letters on it. And so I was like, okay, and I still didn't go like full into like Buddhist tradition or anything like that, but I definitely kept it in the back of my head that that's something that this specific, I'm just going to say ideology knows about the operations of the spirit. You know, when I look at like the African traditions, I'm like, they know about the bloodline and the death and reincarnation cycle, and especially reincarnation with the connotation of karma. And then I look at, you know, more European belief systems, and I say that they know about nature, very much about the land and about the herbology and the flora and the fauna, let's say. And then I knew that the, I'm just going to say Hindu tradition, I'm not exactly sure all the different forms and stuff, but that's what I call it. That might not be correct. But Hindu tradition, you know what I'm saying? They know about the operations of the spirit, about energy dynamics, and an overall kind of celestial kind of picture of things. Now, of course, in every tradition, there are hiccups. None of them are perfect, but when you understand that it's not really about being perfect, the reality is not perfect, there's something that you can learn from every ideology, every religion. Okay. So yeah, then I ended up coming out of that. So when I decided, like, okay, you're right, I don't want to just turn the page on the reality. I don't want to just turn the page to the reality. I ended up back in the Bodhi tree body and then back in my physical body, and I woke up. Now, the interesting thing about this is that when I woke up, which was not the smoothest transition, when I woke up, I kid you not. I could probably find the exact day that this happened, because when I woke up, all of the lights on my block, across the street, and like a block down, they were all out. The power was out. And it was not like that before I did this. Before I did this meditation, it wasn't like that. All of the lights were completely out. And it triggered that because what ended up happening is I ended up watching this video from this woman on YouTube, and her name is the Voodoo Diva. And she was talking about the energy of Ogun or Ogu, which I have a whole another story about that. Oh, no, actually, I posted that. So if you go back to, that's fun to be able to say that now. If you go back to my triangle portal video, then I talk about before this experience with the triangle portal, there was an energy that came to me in the form of a white fox. And he told me that his name was Ogu, O-G-O, in that I should look him up after this experience. And so Ogu or Ogun is an Orisha of metalworking. So I think that he is linked to the first death. But of course, a lot of our killing devices come from metal now. So anyways, there was a form of Ogun that she talked about that was instilled into every child in tradition. And this form of Ogun was so powerful that it could knock out the electricity in, I think she said, a house or something like that. And that immediately made me think about this idea. Because after I got up and there was still that quietness. And so I was like, whoa, what's going on? There's still this quietness. So I went over to my neighbors. We're in a fourplex at the time. I went over to my neighbors and I was like, what's going on? And so they were like, yeah, the power just went out all of a sudden. And so, yeah. Okay, I've been talking so long. Okay, so let me start wrapping it up. So anyways, the power went out for probably about 2 hours, and I was pretty convinced that so when I was up there looking at the pages, I was starting to turn it, and he was talking to me as I was starting to turn the page. And so I was like, you know what? No, let me just chill. Let me just go back to learning my lessons, because this can have an impact on multiple people. Like, I don't know, but the feeling to me was like, I don't really know how to describe it, because I didn't actually get to see that side of it, right? I wasn't on that side of it. I'm getting tingles in my brain. I wasn't on that side of it, and so I don't know exactly what it looked like, but the feeling was like people in this reality, like it's going to change the whole reality. So it wasn't just going to be like, oh, DeeDee goes missing from the reality. I didn't know if like it was going to look like I passed away during the meditation or whatever, but it looked like it was going to change the reality in and of itself. So it would directly impact everyone in the reality. And so when I came back from the meditation and all the lights were out, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that I didn't turn the page, because who knows if I would have actually left the whole reality, like how much things would have changed. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it was a very strange experience now that I think about it. And I don't know what this movie is, but sometimes my spiritual team, whatever, they will give me images of movies and TV shows and stuff that I haven't watched before, but I guess it's in like the collective unconscious. And so since someone has seen it, they have the ability to send it to me. That's my theory. I don't exactly know, but I'm seeing something about like, is it Stepford Wives? Oh my gosh, is it something about Stepford Wives? It's something about somebody's energy being able to, power something, like power a grid, I guess. But it looks like, do we also call that like when homes on the grid? Like in neighborhoods, I don't know, something about that looks like it's coming up, which is strange. Oh, I did say that I was going to do the other one, but I've been talking for an hour already. So I'm going to just do that one another day, because I already been talking for a while. So I'll do the next one as like a part 2. So anyway, shout out to you if you've been listening through all of this. As time goes on, I'll get better and more precise, but I also like just naturally talking about it, because there's a lot of things that come into my mind that are seemingly like random, but then when you start seeing it out in life, you can be like, oh my gosh, this is a connection to this, to this, to this. And then we can start being like, oh, this is how the reality works. So anyways, I'll do a part 2. Okay, I'll just do it. They're like, just go ahead and do it. Okay, so the second experience, and I'll just try to say it quickly. The second experience is a story time where, excuse me. I think this had to do with apportation. Now, I'm not sure in what way, right? Because we have these terms, and the terms have layers to them. So I can say astral projection, like, oh, I astral projected last night. And, me astral projecting in my room is one thing versus astral projecting to France versus astral projecting to Jupiter. Like, there's different variations and levels of these things. So I'm not sure in what form it's apportation, but I just learned about apportation. And as I'm thinking about this experience, I'm assuming that a spirit being able to move a physical person in the reality is also apportation. I don't know. But so this is the experience, okay? So because I'm thinking about the fight that Ray and I had after this experience, and we were like yelling about fairies taking stuff in our house. And I had the sense that someone was outside the house, and I was like, somebody would think that we are so crazy. And actually, I came to find out that there was a friend who intuitively felt like something was going on. So she showed up, and she heard us yelling and screaming probably about these fairies. And she was like, you know, it seemed like something that I shouldn't get in the middle of. And so I decided to go home. And that for me, right, because when you have these experiences, there's always a validation of something. So in the middle of me fighting about these fairies, I had that sense that someone was going to come to the door and knock. And even though she didn't come to the door, she later, like probably like a week later or something, verified to me that she was in fact outside, and she was going to knock on the door and come in, but she felt like it was like a couples thing. Now, she didn't necessarily tell me that she heard that we were fighting about fairies, but I'm assuming because that's what the whole fight was about. And so that's kind of like the validation of like, yeah, something was definitely going on in the house. Okay, so with all that said, let me go back. Okay, so this day, there's a lot of stuff going on during this period in time. So Rose was about, how old was she? Okay, so this was in 2020, and this was in April 2020. Okay, April 2020 was a very significant month in general. It was a very significant month in general. But during this period in time, there was a lot of spiritual phenomenon going on in the house in general. Okay, now this is a different house than the first experience I talked about. It's a different house. So in this house, there was a lot of Morgana, Bridget, Momma, Brigitte, the White Lady, Blooduet or Blooduet, Pan energy during this time period. And that was kind of like a marked time for this. Even at that time, I attracted a person into my life who believed that she was like the embodiment of Bridget. So there's also some Dogon energy in there too, and that's a lot to explain, but these are like the main energies that were kind of around, okay? And so during this time period, there was a day, because Rose was little, so she wasn't crawling yet, okay? And she was in a pack and play. And the kids were also young too, but specifically the one that's closest to her is Ace. So he had this thing of where Rose would like, you know, holler in the pack and play, and he would try to push the pack and play over so that she could get out. But she was not, so she had learned to roll over to her front. And so she was not at a point where she could like totally roll over. So I would come in there and she would be on the pack and play upside down or something, like fussing. But, you know, Ace, he wasn't strong enough to, you know, actually pull her out of the pack and play, even though it was on the ground. But he was strong enough to, you know, push against the wall and push the pack and play over. Okay. These are all really, really critical things to know. So he was not strong enough to pull the pack and play back up either. He was just strong enough to push it over. And then Rose was not strong enough. She would just learn to roll over on her tummy. But of course, she would see the kids outside the pack and play and, you know, want to get out. And so Ace was trying to help her get out. Okay. It was really cute, but then it was really irritating because I walk in there and she'd be hollering on the pack and play. because she didn't know how to get out and, just that kind of stuff. And so anyways, so she did not know how to roll off. Okay. I just want to make sure that that is known. Okay. So this was at night, and it happened to be that the other kids had gone to sleep. Okay. The other kids went to sleep. So we had 3 rooms. So it was the kids' playroom, the kids' room, and then our room. Okay, so I would bring Rose's pack and play into the kids' room. Into the playroom. And then I would bring it back into the kids' room when everybody went to sleep. Okay, because of course, the older kids were on a little bit of a sleep schedule. But of course, the baby, still needed to rock her to sleep and give her bottle and stuff like that. So she would still not really be fussing, but just active. And with kids, they feed off each other's energy. So one starts playing, everybody starts playing, everything like that. So this night, I pulled the pack and play with her in it into the toy room. And the toy room was actually clean for once, which is also significant because we had a lot of toddlers and they would always have these little toys and little tiny pieces and stuff like that. But that day, I made sure that everything was off the ground. So there was nothing on the ground. I think that might have been the time where I just threw most of the toys away, honestly, because I was tired of cleaning them up. It could have honestly been that, now that I'm thinking about it. Because this was after Christmas and, goodness. Anyways, let me focus because that's not, but the importance is that everything was off of the ground, okay? Everything. So the only thing in the toy room was the pack and play and the baby in there. So she was playing in there. I put a little toy in there for her to play with, a little stuffed animal. She was playing with that and she was quiet. Now, I knew that Ace was kind of up and down, so I knew that he was going in there because I could hear him laughing with her. So he was supposed to be sleeping, but he was, in fact, not sleeping. Okay? So I'm going in there to make her a bottle for nighttime. So this is her nighttime bottle. Then she gets her blanket, diaper change, everything to let the baby know it's time to go to sleep, right? You have nighttime rituals to let them know it's time to go to sleep. Okay. So as I'm walking into the kitchen to go make her bottle, I hear within my mind, so this is not audibly outside of me. I have heard audibly outside of me, but this is within my mind. I heard an energy say, make sure that you pay attention to where you put the bottle down. And so, with kids and things like that, stuff has a tendency to go missing, right? And then when you're sleep deprived and you're dealing with kids all day, the chaotic energy of kids, it's very easy to do things on a sort of autopilot. And so it could be very easy to put bottles in the fridge when you actually mean to make the bottle and totally forget that you're even supposed to be doing the bottle. Like sleep-deprived parents or sleep-deprived people in general are the easiest people to spiritually mess with or to have energies in their house and they have no clue. Because there's so many things that happen in the absence of mindfulness, especially when you're dealing with a whole lot of different energies. It's like, and then you don't have the conscious energy really to focus on the little details. Because by this time this is our 4th toddler that we've had, and sleep deprived, like I'm even past that. I don't even know like what to call it by this point. So I'm working on like 30%, but some type of way I'm still making it happen. Okay. Like, woo, goodness grief. Still making it happen. Okay. So I audibly heard, make sure that you remember where you put the bottle down. So instead of the sea of things that were on the counter in the kitchen, I put it on a piece of counter that was between our fridge and our oven, because that piece of counter didn't have anything on it, nothing on it. It was totally clear next to the oven. And so I was like, okay, obviously I remember it right here because it's the only piece of what do you call it? Countertop between these two things, and there's nothing here. So that'll be easy because I couldn't remember exactly where I put the formula or the water bottles and stuff. It was just a mess. Like, brain just scrambled. So I put the bottle down. Wait, this is really, like, it's funny, but it's not funny. Like, at the time, it was not funny at all. I was PO'd, okay? So I turned my back to the other side of the kitchen, okay? So the oven and stuff would be behind me now, okay? So I'm on the opposite side, and I'm on the counter. Oh, look, it's 10:43. I love you too, universe. Universe is like, sorry you had to go through that, girl. Sheesh, I wouldn't do it again, okay? Okay, so anyways, so I'm on the kitchen thing. I'm opening up the cabinets on this side, and I find formula and everything like that. It was pretty easy to find. And so now I have them in my hand. I'm turning around to go back to the bottle. The bottle is gone. Poof, disappeared. And immediately I was like, oh my gosh, we have fairies in the house. I'm like, oh my gosh, we have fairies in the house. Immediately, I was like, we have fairies in the house. And so I'm like, oh my goodness. Because if you know about fairy lore, you know that fairies like to take things. And so I'm like, oh my goodness, no. I'm like, and so for people that have a more skeptical mind, which I appreciate that, because if this stuff wasn't happening to me, I would find it very, very hard to believe. But I could hear the kids playing. So Rose and Ace were still in the room. So he did not come and take it or anything like that. He didn't run and come and grab it when I wasn't looking. I heard them the whole time in the room laughing and playing. And I was the only one in the living room in the house. This is like during the time where Ray was like downtown performing all the time, like until like 1 o'clock in the morning. So pretty much from almost like 1 in the afternoon to 1 o'clock in the morning, I would be at home with the kids, child. So it was only me in the house, and those are the only 2 kids up. And the bottle was gone. Vamoose. Gone. Not there anymore. And I'd had that experience before where I suspected something like that had happened. But this time, especially since I heard the voice and it was like, pay attention because we're about to take it. That's like the implied message, right? Like, pay attention because we about to take it. It was absolutely gone. And I was so PO. Like, I wasn't even like, oh my gosh, this is so wild. This is so crazy. What's going on in life? I'm like, that baby is laughing right now, but in a second, she's going to be crying. And so I'm like, give me the bottle back. Now, thank goodness during this time period, right? Because we were living like, penny to penny. Okay. I had just so happened to pick up a 3-pack of bottles at Dollar General. So we used to just pick up 1 bottle, but this particular day I was like, you know what, let me just get a 3-pack. So thank goodness with toddlers and kids that go around and things, do go missing, just having kids and stuff, normal missing stuff. One of the bottles had already gone missing. We're already on the second one, which is also why I was upset, because I was like, oh my gosh, we're already down to 1 bottle now. So thank goodness we still had 1 bottle left. So I was able to make her a bottle, and then we got, some more bottles the next day. But I was just so annoyed by that, because I was like, this is not the time to be playing around with the bottles. Like, give it back, okay? So I make the bottle, because when it's fresh out the pack, I like to wash them. I think that's what they recommend anyway, with warm water and stuff, which was taking more time, right? And when you have a baby, you're trying to get the baby to go to sleep. You've been dealing with kids all day. I'm like, I'm not trying to do 2 more seconds worth of work. So I was highly annoyed Okay, highly annoyed. So I'm washing out the bottle and everything like that, making sure, the chemicals or whatever in there are gone, making sure that it's safe for her to drink. I make her the bottle, and then I walk into the room. Child, I walk into the room and Ace is standing next to the pack and play, which is completely up, right? How it's supposed to be. And Rose is in the middle of the room on the ground. Do you understand what I'm saying? Ace was standing next to the pack and play laughing. And the pack and play was up on where it's supposed to be, next to the wall. And Rose was in the center of the room on her stomach, laughing, doing her little tummy time. I literally kid you not. Now, when I saw that, I was on pause because I was like, what? Because he was not strong enough and didn't have the coordination at that point to pull the pack and play up from the ground. And even if he did do it, now this was all in the matter of like 2 or 3 minutes, okay? I didn't hear any thud on the ground of a pack and play falling over. I definitely didn't hear the thud of it going back, right? Because at this point, they don't have the motor skills to even, or just the perception of when they're putting the pack and play back up to make sure that they put it up perfectly where it doesn't make a sound. Do you understand what I'm saying? These are like critical clues about child development that I was like, there's no way that he could have, no possible way that he could have tipped it over, brought her out of it, put it back up perfectly, and she's sitting in the middle of the room perfectly. So not only, and I actually took the pack and play. Look, okay, I actually took the pack and play and put it down and knocked it down. And she was too far away from it for it to even be that situation. Like, she wasn't, like, I put the pack and play down on the ground on the side just by the ridiculousness of a possibility, because I knew it wasn't possible, that would she be perfectly even near it. She was in the center of the room. She was not even near the pack and play on its side. So somebody would have had to perfectly place her there. She would have had to roll, which she did not know how to do both sides yet. There was absolutely no way. Absolutely no way. Now, after that, my brain was on pause. I was like, what? Now, the only reason that I didn't super freak out, well, 2 reasons. Because first, of course, is that I've had these experiences before. I've had these experiences before and I did freak out. But, as you've had these experiences, you just don't freak out as much anymore. It takes a lot. That's probably why I have so much trouble, like, astral projecting on call, because it's like people use, like, strange things in the dream world to be like, oh, let me get lucid now. But there's so much strange things that just happen in reality now that it takes a lot to really shake me up and really be like, oh, this is not reality. Because there's so much stuff, crazy stuff that happens in reality that is not, quote unquote, spirit based. Like, the whole reality is crazy. And so I didn't freak out in that moment. Like, I didn't think it was some demonic presence or anything like that, because they were both laughing. Like, they're both laughing. Oh, yeah, and I forgot to mention that. Also, her toy was out with her, too. Her toy was out in front of her, too. Like, someone had placed the toy there for her to play with. Because she had, like, this little toy that I had her in there playing with while I was making her bottle. The toy was out there in front of her, too. And she was trying to reach for it. Now, Ace could have done... No, he couldn't have done that either, because he wasn't tall enough to reach into it. He wasn't tall enough to reach in there and get the pack and play was, like, just taller than him. Which is why he... And whoever picked her up and put her out in the center of the room also put her toy out there so she could play with it. So they were laughing and they were joking. They were having a good time. So I was just like, must be a nice spirit. Like, okay, it must be a nice spirit, I guess. And I just want to say, okay, so that was, and we never found the bottles. So, of course, when Ray got home, I told him about the experience, and I was highly annoyed because he was like, you just misplaced the bottle. And so that's what we were like in a big old fight about, because I was like, I did not just misplace this bottle. And he literally spent like an hour and a half trying to find where the bottle was because we could not find it. And that was the other thing. It's not like the bottle just turned up, you know, behind the fridge by some type of miracle mystery, or in the oven, or, you know, something like that. Like, even when we moved out, and that was a year later we moved out, and we never found the bottle. I never found it. Never found it. And then it was really funny because in May, which I'll talk about, I ended up having a dream where someone came to me and they're like, your house is infested with gnomes. And at this point, I didn't know. I don't think I had seen a depiction of flying gnomes before, but there's the confirmation. She confirmed to me that she was like, they are running rampant in your house. And I was like, oh my gosh, how did they even get here? So, yes, those are my two little experiences, child, and it's wild. And probably at some point I'll do like a video on my theory about like why certain people experience certain things and why people don't. I think that would be really interesting to talk about too. Now, of course, there are theories that I have right now. So some of them, since I do QHHT and regression sessions and, you know, can talk to different aspects of the mind, and sometimes disincarnated, is that the word, disincarnated entities, I get certain information, but a lot of it is still theoretical right now because I haven't talked to, like, you know, thousands of people. So yeah, anyways, I'm sending you guys hugs and all type of stuff, and I would love to hear in the comment section if you have had encounters with fairies or things going missing, keys going missing. I heard they really like shiny things too. You know, like rings and stuff like that. Now, of course, I'm not saying every time something goes missing, it's fae activity. I'm not saying that. But sometimes, though, most things can be explained, and there are sometimes the exception to where it is something that is beyond normal explanation. We'll say normal explanation, because that is a normal explanation. Just depends on what your version of normal is. So anyways, make sure that you comment, subscribe, share, like it with share it with a friend, like it, heavy on the commenting. Yeah, and make sure you don't miss when I post out on more videos. Okay, bye.